Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of my coverage of the study guide for our upcoming Unit 1 test. Today I'm going to cover questions 6 through 10. Now, questions 6 and 7 here are about embryonic similarities. And I didn't get a chance to cover this kind of topic in class, so I want to hit this a little bit in class before we do take our test. Let's just go over these questions here. Comparing the embryos of different animals can show relationships that can't be seen when comparing fully formed animals. Why is this the case? So we know that organisms take time to develop. They're not just born fully formed. You were born from your mother, but you weren't as a baby the entire time. You developed inside of your mother's womb, and then you come out as a baby. There's what's called the embryonic stage, where things develop over time. And what scientists have done is they've looked at what these embryos look like inside of the egg or inside of the mother as they're growing. And so what we can do is we can look at the embryo of different species and see how they developed over time. So at the top here, you're looking at the same, we're looking at embryos of the fish. This is the fish. Where's my pen at? This one's the fish. This is the salamander, the tortoise, the chick, the hog, the calf. And so we can see they're all going to develop into different species. I mean, here's the human right here. But at this stage in development, when they're an embryo, they all look very similar. They all look like these weird butted aliens with long tails. So what this is showing is that there is evolutionary relationships, similarities between humans and fish. Even though fish look nothing like humans whatsoever, they almost look identical, or not identical, but they do look very similar when they were embryos. When the embryo was a couple weeks old and the fish was a couple days old. And you see this kind of similarities. And we also find similar parts in these embryos. Now, the parts will go away as the organism develops. So some of the parts that we would find in embryos are these little gill slits right here. Slits where gills would normally form. Humans don't have gills. I can't breathe underwater, and you probably can't either, but fish do. So why would the human develop gill slits if they're going to go away? Why would we start to develop them? Well, we start to develop the gill slits kind of by mistake. It's like an accident. It's just this problem in our programming where we're like, all right, we're becoming a fish. Oh, wait, never mind, we're becoming a human. Because we have a relationship still to the fish. So comparing embryos of different animals, why is this the case? It shows relationships that can't be seen. Because there's going to be parts like the tail here. I don't have a tail. You guys don't have tails, I'm hoping, right? So the tails are an example of a homologous structure that's present in the embryo, but it's gone when they're fully formed. There are, we learned this word, homologous structures present. They're there during the embryo stage. These homologous structures are gone when they're fully formed. They're lost in the fully formed organism. So we can look at embryos to see relationships between different organisms because there are homologous structures. There are structures that are shared between the rabbit and the fish, or the salamander and the hog. And then some of those structures, to point them out, are like the tail. The tails are very common. And then also the gill slits. Those are very unique. Let's go to question 7. This is along the same line, so this will kind of add to this question here. Question 7 is about the New World monkey and the chimpanzee. Now, the chimpanzee is an ape, and the monkey is a monkey. And the way you tell a monkey from an ape is that a monkey has a tail. That's the typical way to know a monkey from an ape. So why would we think that monkeys and apes are related? Well, the ape actually developed from the monkey. The monkey is the ancestor of the ape. How do I know that? How could I prove that the chimpanzee and the monkey are evolutionarily related? What would we see as the embryo develops of these animals? Well, we would probably see a tail. In the embryo, you would see a tail for the chimpanzee that would go away. Now I'm going to write that down here. In the embryo form, or during development, the embryo of the chimpanzee and the New World monkey both have a tail. That's what we would expect to see. Look at question 8. This is very similar. You can kind of see a diagram here, a figure of early development for the human, the pig, and the fish. These are what the embryos look like. Notice how similar they kind of look, especially the human and the fish. It's almost identical. And then later development, this would be like the end stage, maybe like 8 months for a human. So what we're trying to do here now is compare early development to late development. What feature is present at the early development stage, but present in only one animal at the late development stage? So you're going to look at each of these parts. So like, let's look at the eye first. Eye. All of them have eyes early. And then at the end, the fish have an eye, the pigs have an eye. So this is not a good example. Tails. So the human they all three have tails at the beginning. But at the end, the pig still has a tail, and so does the fish. So the tail is not the right answer. We're looking for something that is present in only one animal at the end. So when you look at this one more time, you should notice the gill slits. Let's circle this in blue. The gill slits is in all three animals in early development when they're embryos. But then in later development, only the fish keep those gill slits. The pig and the human have lost the gill slits. And so that's showing the evolutionary, again, relationship between pig, human, and fish. They're all related because they all had gill slits early on. Let's look at question 9. The diagram provided here is a phylogenetic tree. It shows how groups of organisms are related through a shared evolutionary history. So this is called a cladogram. It's this diagram at the top. And it's showing how everything is related to each other. Notice the birds are closer to the crocodiles than the rodents. What that is saying is that birds are more related to crocodiles than to rodents. That's what that's saying. The closer things are on the chart, the more related they are to each other. Okay, so amphibians are more related to the fish than to a bird. That's what that's saying. So the question though is asking, which of the following provides the best evidence to create this diagram? So what I'm really asking you to do here is, can you list everything we learned for evidence for evolution? How would we know how related things are? What is the evidence to show how things are all related to each other? And so we really have learned two main points I want to kind of hit on here. We've learned two things for evidence for evolution. Evidence for evolution and ancestry. How do we know things are related? Number one, we look at fossil evidence. We can see the change in time from the fossil evidence. But then how do I know that amphibians are related to rodents? How could I look at that? Well, I need to not just look at the fossil evidence, I have to look at the biological evidence. I need to look at the actual parts of the animals, the anatomy. And so I'm going to use biological evidence and fossil evidence combined. I'm going to combine both of these things. And I'm going to start comparing body parts. We learned this in class. We learned we can compare body parts to see how related things are to each other. How do I know the primate is related to the rodent? They probably have very similar body parts, very similar body structures. So I'm just going to put this down. We're going to put compare body structure. And what that's called, remember, there's a term we learned, it's called comparative anatomy. Anatomy means body structure. So compare body structure, comparative anatomy. And what are we going to compare? We're going to compare biological, so things that are still alive, and fossils. We'll compare both of those things combined and really see how things are related to make that chart right there. Now let's do that on question 10. We'll stop here on question 10. The bones of the four limbs, so the arms, wing or arm, of three animals is shown below: the bird, the bat, and the human. What is the most reasonable conclusion that can be drawn from a comparison of these three structures? What can we say about these three organisms from looking at them? We can say, first of all, they must be related. They must be evolutionarily related. Why would we say that? Why would we say that the bird and the bat and the human are related? Well, I'm going to color them in. We have similar bones. That's the humerus bone right there. Right? This top one is the ulna, and this bottom one is the radius. And these bones are shared because they have shared structures. And I'm going to list out what those are one more time. I'll just put it at the top here. So they have the humerus. That's the bone in your arm that kind of holds your bicep and your tricep muscles. You have your ulna. It's like the bone on the top of your forearm, and then you have the radial bone, the radius. So those are all shared structures. And we can see that they're not perfectly related because we don't have all the same hands. All right, I'll stop here actually, and I'll break this video up. So look out for the next two videos for 11 through 20.